Alright everybody, welcome to Garden Sound. Today we're going to be talking about something that I have wanted to talk about for a while. I've had a bit of a crisis lately, and that has led me to question what I'm doing and what any of this means. Today we're going to be having a look at musical notation. I'm a composer, for those of you who don't know, and I practice the art of writing music on the paper. It is a quickly dying art. The goal of musical notation is to write music and get music as close to the original idea as possible. There have been books and books and books written about how to write music, and it's taken a lot of different forms over the years. You have things in the early days that were shaping the way music looks today. Examples from the Byzantine Empire, which had some interesting notational stuff. Kind of reminds me of the way that Elvish script looks in The Lord of the Rings. No doubt that J.R.R. Tolkien took some nods from this. From the Byzantine script we derive our key signatures. They had the ideas of key signatures and time signatures well before anybody else. You have examples from Middle-aged Christian musical literature with neumes, N-E-U-M-E-S, what we call these shapes. That's kind of where we get the idea of note heads and stems. Some of the staves, some of the lines and spaces kind of stuff. And then you have Greek, which is where we get a lot of our solfege, sol, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And the idea that there is a relative sliding scale that we can use and classify different keys. That's very brief. It does not cover everything, but that's just a quick, where does this come from? This series is going to be several parts. We're going to go through just what notation looks like. We're going to go through modern types of notation. Today we're just going to go over the basics, like what does a note mean? What is a value? That sort of thing. And we're also going to, at some point, go over the piano roll and how all of that relates to this in terms of notation and MIDI. I promise that by the end of this, you're going to learn more than you ever wanted to know about notation. So I'm just going to put a note here on the paper. That is just a dot. Now, I know that doesn't really mean much as it is, but what it does do is it's a dot on a staff. And so it tells us that there is something about the position of this particular figure. There's something about this particular symbol that has a value relative to other lines and spaces. So the first thing we want to do is say, okay, what do these lines and what do these spaces mean? And the way we do that is a clef. So just to keep things simple, I'm going to use a treble clef. That's a treble clef. There's several different types of clefs. I'm going to draw them up here so we can see them. So there are the three clefs, right? We've got treble, we've got bass, we've got, I'll call it alto clef. Some people call it the viola clef. That is an appropriate name for it. I one time had an argument with my father over whether or not that is called a viola clef. And I was sent to my room for that, and I am still bitter about that at 28. But I am making YouTube videos, and I have more subscribers than he does, so screw you, Dad. It's called a viola clef. Treble here. We've got our note. Now we know what value this note has because we know what the different things on the treble clef are. We know what the different note names are for the treble clef. On the treble clef, the spaces are F, A, C, and E, and the lines are E, G, B, D, and F. You can remember this with two different acronyms. For the spaces, you can remember F-A-C-E, face. For the lines, you can remember every good boy does fine. Or you can just, stare at them long enough until it turns into the matrix, and then you just kind of start to be able to read it without thinking about it. So now we know that this is note name. All right, we know it's got a name, we know it's got a value. This is a C. Now we need to know other things about this particular dot. We don't know what key it's in. We do not know how fast that note is, and we also don't know the duration. Right now that note could be a whole bunch of different durations depending on the flag we apply to it. We need to know how to count this, right? We need to know how to count this note. Is this a 1? Is this one note in a measure? What's a measure? How do all these things relate? So we need to start putting down some more things at the very beginning here to let us know what the hell we're looking at. So the next thing we need to have after the clef is a key signature. All right, the key signature tells us what key we're in. So I'm just going to arbitrarily say that we are in the key of F, which is going to be 1 flat. And the way you memorize these is just by memorizing. That's all there is to it. So that tells us that the note B is flat for the rest of this piece. No matter what we do, unless we tell it otherwise, unless we tell our musician otherwise by inserting what's called an accidental, which we'll get into later, It doesn't matter. So every B in this piece, every B on this line at least, is going to be flat. All right, that's what this tells us. And so we know that this is a C. All right, and we know it's not a B, so we don't have to worry about that. But we know if we do encounter a B, it's flat. Now we need to know what count this is. How long is this note? What, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to do something really simple. And I'm going to say that we are in 4/4 time. This is called a time signature. It is not a fraction. You do not write it this way. If you put a line between these, you are a dummy. It's not like that. It is written this way, just a number over a number. That's it. And what this tells us, how many and what. All right, so we've got 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note, or the 4, right, the division 4, gets the beat. But we still don't know what this note is. There's no flag on it. So if we look back at history, we look at the Middle Ages script, we see that those are the first kind of ideas of flags. Between that and the Byzantine script, where they just held out the note, or just extended the length of the line, that is how we know what the length of the note is. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a stem right there. All right, now we know a lot more about this. We know that this is a quarter note. That's how a quarter note looks. A quarter note is written this way: a dot with a stem. Stems are going to go up on the right side until you get to the middle, and depending on who you're talking to, that middle note either goes up or down. It doesn't super matter. There's not a convention for that. And you want your stems to be about equal length. So stems are always going to go up if it's below the middle line, and then either up or down depending on your teacher for the middle line. And then they're all going to go down and be on the left-hand side when you're on top of the middle line. All right, now stems can have something on them called a flag, and that looks like this. So I'm going to write a couple different notes here. Now what a flag does is it further subdivides a note. Like this, that's now an 8th note. If I were to write a flag like this, it's now a 16th note. If I were to write a flag like this, it's now a 32nd note. So each time you add a flag onto a stem, it divides that note value in half. So this is an 8th, turns a quarter note into an 8th. This is a 16th, and this is a 32nd. There's also these things that modify a note called dots. If I put a dot after a note like that, that increases the value of the note by half. This is going to be a quarter note plus an 8th note. And it would normally be followed by whatever the value of that dot is. Normally. Again, now this is not a hard and fast rule. You probably see something like this with staccato notes. That's a pretty common phrase. It goes da 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 da. That's what that would sound like if you were repeating it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. All right, let's go back to our example over here. So in our example, we've got our note named C. All right, we don't know if it has a dot yet. It doesn't have a flag, so we're just going to assume this is a quarter note. So if we were to write an entire measure according to our time signature, which is 4/4, there are 4 notes per measure with a value of quarter. So at some point, our measure has to equal 4 quarter notes. Now that can be subdivided, but it has to equal 4 quarter notes. It has to count 4. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is put 3 more quarter notes in here to round out our measure. They're all value of C. Now we haven't talked about how fast this is. So we don't even know how fast to count this. I'm going to say that our BPM, or our quarter note, right? What does our quarter note equal? You don't write BPM, you write quarter note equals, and then you pick a number. I'm going to say for the sake of ease that it's 120, or allegro, or allegretto. Those are Italian words that you can use in place of this. I find this is far more accurate. So 120. Which is the default tempo in Ableton. So this is about here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this would be read C, 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 C. The end. That's as far as we're going to go today. I'm going to put this back in focus here so we can take a screenshot if you'd like. But we're just going to keep adding to this page.